Have you ever wondered what happened to the players from the Seattle Kraken selected in their expansion draft? Well, we're going to continue on with our mini series, this time with players that played anywhere from 20 to 75 games for the organization. I don't like that one. Where are they now? That's right. We're going over players selected by the Seattle Kraken in the expansion draft. Here's part 2.
You are Locked On Kraken, your daily podcast on the Seattle Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey to the hey, what do you say, Seattle hockey fans? Welcome to another episode of Locked On Kraken, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, bringing you your favorite team every single day. Want to let you know that this little mini episode brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Download the FanDuel app now by visiting FanDuel.com and win $300 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Erica L. Ayala here for the second installment. If you haven't listened to part 1 already, we talked about players that had 0 to 19 games played for the Seattle Kraken. Some players are still in the NHL. Some players have really only been AHL players after being selected and let go from the Seattle Kraken. None of the players in that first category are still with the organization, but we will see that some of the players, I think you can guess in which category, are still with the organization. And of course, we'll catch up with them as well. But on today's episode, it's all about players that were selected in the expansion draft that played anywhere from 20 to 75 games with the Seattle Kraken. And so for here, we go to first up, and we're going to start with players that have anywhere from 24 to 40 or fewer games played. We're going to start with Cole Lind. And Cole is a right winger taken from the Vancouver Canucks. He is, of course, not with the Kraken anymore. Played 24 games total. Cole Lind did for the Seattle Kraken. Cole after Seattle, played with the Charlotte Checkers in 21-22, played with Coachella Valley in 22-23. Some of his games, just one really. So of 24, one of his NHL games with Seattle came in that 23-24 season before he went back to Coachella Valley, and he played out the 24-25 season with the Texas Stars in the AHL. If we look, and as of right now, still listed on that Dallas Stars roster. We can see if we look at his stats, really hasn't played though with the Dallas Stars after signing as a free agent in July of 2024, has been pretty much an AHLer since then. Moving on, we will go to Cale Fleury. Cale Fleury is an interesting player when it comes to the Seattle Kraken. And I know some people have opinions on the defenseman, on whether he should still be with the team or whatnot. And, we'll talk about another Fleury as well here, also taken in the expansion draft. But if we look at what Cale has done, he played for the Seattle Kraken from that first inaugural season until 23-24. That's when we saw him, and 24-25, we saw him play with the AHL team. In 23-24, only one NHL game. In 24-25, he played 14, but, mostly was with the AHL at that point in time. Right now, Cale Fleury, not in the NHL, hasn't played in the NHL since that 24-25 season. Moving on from Cale Fleury, we head to Chris Driedger. Chris Driedger, taken as a goaltender, as I'm sure you all are aware, taken from the Florida Panthers, only played, when it was all said and done, only played 29 games with the Seattle Kraken. Now, we have talked about this ad nauseum on the show, some of this having to do with different injuries he was dealing with. And then by the time Joey Daccord started getting a few repetitions, it was just going to be hard for Chris Driedger to beat Joey out or fill Philip Grubauer for that matter. It just never really worked out with Chris Driedger. I mentioned another Fleury and Hayden Fleury, or I should say, excuse me, Cale Fleury, 27 games, Chris Driedger, 29. Hayden Fleury is our next one that we're going to talk about here. And, this is a player that I think a lot of people wanted to make it work when it came to Seattle, and it just didn't. He played with the Seattle Kraken in the 2021-22 season, had 36 games overall with the Seattle Kraken before heading over to the Winnipeg Jets by the next season. That is, he had a stint, or excuse me, from the Seattle Kraken, he actually went to Tampa Bay. He's with the Winnipeg Jets now. He was traded or claimed by Seattle from Anaheim in the expansion draft. Then he signed as a free agent in Tampa Bay July 13th, 2022, and then signed as a free agent in Winnipeg on July 4th, 2024. So, a guy who just never quite worked out for the Seattle Kraken, but has been able to get some time continuously elsewhere. We're going to close out with Colin Blackwell before we step aside for a little bit of a break here. Colin Blackwell, a centerman taken from the New York Rangers and, is now with the Dallas Stars, played 39 games with the Seattle Kraken in that 21-22 season. That's where he got all 39 games. Then he headed to the Toronto Maple Leafs later in the season. 22-23 and 23-24, he spent with the Chicago Blackhawks before going to the Dallas Stars. All right, he was a part of that Mark Giordano trade. So we are going to step aside and then get into players that have had 50 or more, well, really 49 or more games played with the Seattle Kraken organization. That's coming up on today's episode of Locked On Kraken. Today's episode of Locked On Kraken brought to you by Monarch Money. Most people can't name all their financial accounts or even what they're worth, whether it's 401ks, properties, or investments. And when you don't have the full picture, you can end up leaving money on the table. That's where Monarch Money comes in. It's an all-in-one personal finance tool that brings your entire financial life together in one clean, easy-to-use interface on your laptop or your phone. Monarch is built for people with busy lives. I can attest to that. If you've put off organizing finances, Monarch is for you. Monarch does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in less than minutes. See clear data visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, and finally feel in control of your money without ever touching a spreadsheet. I was on a call earlier today and I was like, please, if you get the template ready for me, I will knock a spreadsheet out. But having to come up with it by myself, no thank you. And that's why I like Monarch Money. I input the information that I know how to gather. They do all the back end formatting stuff for me. The dashboards I love, especially the cash flow dashboard. So don't let financial opportunity slip through the cracks. Use code Locked On NHL at monarchmoney.com. You can use that in your browser for half off your first year. That's 50% off your first year at monarchmoney.com when you use code Locked On NHL. All right, players with 49 or more games, or I should say 49 to 75 games. We've got a handful of players here. It starts with Cale Fleury. That is a right winger taken from Nashville. He is now with the Toronto Maple Leafs, played 49 games for the Seattle Kraken. Another player with 49 games for the Kraken, Mason Appleton, a centerman who we got in the expansion draft from the Winnipeg Jets, now with the Detroit Red Wings. Jeremy Lauzon, taken as a defenseman from the Boston Bruins, now with the Nashville Predators. Every once in a while when I squadcast or squidcast with Ann Kimmel from Locked On Predators, we'll talk about Jeremy as we are mutuals. The next one, I'm actually going to skip. He has the next most games played in a Kraken uniform at 55, but you'll probably know why. I'll skip him in a minute. So we're going to go to a player that is the last player remaining with under 100 games played for the Kraken, and that is your boy Joonas Donskoi, right winger. Came over from the Colorado Avalanche, taken from the Colorado Avalanche in the expansion draft. He is now retired, played 75 games for the Seattle Kraken. Unfortunately, on the back end of his career, was dealing with injury that he couldn't get back to the ice. So, yeah, Joonas Donskoi, I think of him fondly, although he was only with us for a short time. But I skipped over a player that is a defenseman. We got him from the Calgary Flames. He's now with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Only played 55 games for the Seattle Kraken, but that is only a snapshot of what this man has done in the NHL. I know I've been asking you who are the top, or can we get a player from the Seattle Kraken in the top 100 of our list that we have coming up. So yes, the player that I'm thinking of course, is our first ever captain, Mark Giordano. Of his total NHL games, which is over 1,100, almost 1,150, he's played 55 with the Seattle Kraken, our first ever captain, and it just didn't go the way we wanted it to go in that first season. So the Kraken ended up offloading Mark Giordano. But I was saying that, we have had people tuning in. We've had people tuning in as I've been asking. We have the Locked On Top 100 that we're tallying up. And I was asking, can a Seattle Kraken player crack that top 100? And I remember one of the comments being like, well, I don't know about like the top 100 players of right now who are on the Kraken. We'll see. But if we look at all-time Kraken players, which again, we will do down the road, if we look at all-time Kraken players, hands down, I got a comment saying that the best ever to play for the Seattle Kraken, Mark Giordano. I mean, he's got a storied career. He's going to be a Hall of Famer. He went to the Toronto Maple Leafs. I mentioned Colin Blackwell also earlier. He's been there since, in the last handful of seasons. He retired after the he retired after the 23-24 season, and is just he seemed like the consummate professional. Didn't know him very well, but enjoyed covering him. He works now in player development for the Toronto Maple Leafs. Still a very dapper man, having a good time. But Mark Giordano, for sure, when the history books about his career, but specifically his time with the Kraken, he was our first ever captain. And, just a great guy. Glad that he had a little bit of time with us, even though he is one of the few players, or one of the last players, although he didn't quite get to the century mark with us, but we wish him well in his retirement, and of course the work that he's doing off the ice with the Toronto Maple Leafs. Okay, that's part 2. Coming up, part 3, 100 or more games. Now, some of these guys from the expansion draft, all of them are from the expansion draft. Some of them are still with the Seattle Kraken. Most of them are, but a few aren't, and we will break it down. We'll go from who has, of the remaining class from the expansion draft, who has the least amount of games played for the organization and who has the most. I think you probably know who has the most. You may be surprised from the names that are left who has the least, or maybe not, but I don't know. I guess we'll find out. As always, be kind to yourselves, be kind to others, hold fast, stay true. And as always, we say loud and proud, let's go Kraken. I'll catch you on part 3, where we talk about where are they now? the players from the 2021 Seattle Kraken expansion draft. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace out, everybody.